Good afternoon, everyone. I am Trisha Albakatan, and I'm here to present about the Hebrew literature, and I will also discuss who are the authors or writers at the time. The authors or writers at these times are Ruth Almog, Aharon Appelfeld, Ahayim Naman Bialik, Aharon Meged, Robert Bernard Alter, Gershon Sheikh, Uri Greenberg, Jacob Fitchman, Amos Ozi, Saint Mark the Evangelist. First, I'll be giving you a brief introduction of biblical literature. The phrase biblical literature reminds us that the Bible is literary in nature and comprises multiple genre, prose narrative, poetry, law, proverbs, and etc. So that its analysis requires, among other things, literary methods broadly defined. As with any ancient literature, great care must also be taken to read it within its historical context. And the biblical books themselves, in the contrast to most of their modern day counterparts, are not discrete composition attributed to single authors, but complex works to which multiple authors and editors contributed, not to mention the oral tradition underlying them. First, we have Ruth Almog. She was born on May 15, 1936 in Petah Tikva, Mandatory Palestine. Her parents immigrated from Hamburg in 1933. She studied at the David Yalon Teachers College at Tel Aviv University. After that, she taught philosophy and film at Tel Aviv University. She was also the deputy editor of the literary section of the mainstream daily Haaretz and Writers in Residence at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. She is also married to a poet, Aaron Almog, and they have two daughters. She has a lot of awards, and some it are in 1985, 2000 Zeev Prize, in 1989 Brenner Prize, 2000 Yad Vashem Prize and Anderson Honor Citation in the year 2001. Agden Prize from the Jerusalem Municipality. Ruth Almog has four famous works, and these are: first is the Exile, which is a novel, year 1971, after To Be Shiva Stories in 1979, Nafi, a children's story in 1979, The Stranger and the Fall in 1980. The themes is social justice and fiction. So now we have Aharon Appelfeld. Aharon, Aharon was born as Irvin Appelfeld on February 16, 1932. He was an Israeli novelist and Holocaust survivor. In Israel, Appelfeld made up for his lack of formal schooling and learned Hebrew, the language in which he began to write. His first literary efforts were short stories, but gradually he progressed to novels. He also completed his studies at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, and in addition with that he lived in Mevaseret Zion and taught literature at Ben-Gurion University of the Negev and was often writing in Jerusalem Tishu, house built Tishu. He also has awards, and these are: in 1975 he had the Brenner Prize for Literature, in 1979 for the Bialik Prize for Literature, in 1983 Israel Prize for Literature, and in the year 1989 he has a National Jewish Book Award for Fiction for Baden Hymn 1939 and for the Immortal Bart Fuchs. His famous work is a Baden Hymn, year 1939, was published in 1975, and it also his best-known book. And the themes are love, faith, and redemption. For the third author or writer, we have Ahayim Naman Bialik. He was born on January 9, 1873. He was a Jewish poet who wrote primarily in Hebrew but also in Yiddish. Bialik was one of the pioneers of modern Hebrew poetry. He was part of the vanguard of Jewish thinkers who gave voice to the breath of new life in Jewish life. Being a noted essayist and storyteller, Bialik also translated major works from European languages. Although he died before Israel became a state, Bialik ultimately became to be recognized as Israel's national poet. Some of his awards are: first is the Bialik Prize is an annual literary award given by the municipality of Tel Aviv, Israel for significant accomplishment in Hebrew literature. The prize is named in memory of Chaim Nahman Bialik. There are two separate prizes and one specifically for literature, which is in the field of the fiction, and the other for the Jewish thought. The prize was established in January 1933 in Bialik's 60th birthday. His famous work is The Jewish People, and he has a theme of blessing of the nation. Next would be Aharon Meged. He worked as a literary editor for the Hebrew newspaper La Merhav and Davar. In 1977 to 78, he was an author in residence at the Center of Hebrew Studies affiliated with the University of Oxford. He made several lecture tours of the United States and was also author in a residence at the University of Iowa. He published 35 books. These are his awards. In 1974, Megad won the Bialik Prize for his book, The Aviator Notebooks, a novel and a Trees and Stones. In 2003, he was awarded the Israel Prize for Literature. Megad won the Brenner Prize, the S.Y. Agnon Prize, and the Prime Minister's Prize. The title of his famous work is The Living on the Dead. His themes are philosophical and social. And for the fifth author, we have Robert Bernard Alter. Robert Bernard Alter was born in 1935. He is an American professor of Hebrew and comparative literature at the University of California, Berkeley, where he has taught since 1967. He published his translation of the Hebrew Bible in 2018. For the awards, his book, The Art of Biblical Narrative, won the National Jewish Book Award for Jewish Thought. In 2009, he was the recipient of the Robert Kurtz Award in Los Angeles Times for lifetime contribution to American letters. He was awarded an honorary Doctor of Humanities degree by Yale University in 2010. He is a Doctor Honors of Causa of Hebrew University year 2015. The Hebrew Bible, the writing is a famous work. The theme is religious. Next is Gershon Sheikh. In 1950, Sheikh studied at the Hebrew University of Jerusalem, where he earned a doctorate in Hebrew literature in 1964 and later chaired the Department of Hebrew Literature. In addition to his many publications in Hebrew, he also wrote more than 30 books of criticism in order of language. For his awards, 1987, Bialik Prize for Jewish Thought, 1993, Israel Prize for Hebrew Literature, 2000 to 2001, Fellow, Katz Center for Advanced Judaic Studies, 2004, Bahat Award for Nonfiction. The modern Hebrew fiction is his famous work. He has a theme of religious. For the next author, we have Uri Greenberg. He was born on September 22, 1896. He was an acclaimed Israel poet, journalist, and politician who wrote in Yiddish and Hebrew. Widely regarded among the greatest poets in the country's history. He was awarded the Israel Prize in 1957 and the Bialik Prize in 1947, 1954, and 1977. All for his contribution to fine literature. Following Israel's independence in 1948, he also served in the first Knesset as a member of Menachem Begin's Herut Party. Greenberg's revisionist orientation had an important influence on both his writing and his politics. His awards are in 1947 and 1954 and 1977. Greenberg was awarded the Bialik Prize for Literature. In 1957, Greenberg was awarded the Israel Prize for his contribution to literature. In 1976, the Knesset held a special session in honor of his 80th birthday. Also his famous work is The Street of the River, The Book of Dirges and Power, and the theme are freedom. Jacob Fichman was transliterated as Yaakov Fichman, 25 November 1881, an acclaimed Hebrew poet, as essayist and literary critic. He has 3 awards. In 1945, Fichman received the Bialik Prize for his book of poetry, Beyat Sadeh, A Corner of a Field, published in 1943. In 1953, Fichman again received the Bialik Prize, this time in respect of several of his works. In 1957, Fichman was awarded the Israel Prize for Literature. Beyat Sadeh, A Corner of a Field, was published in 1943. Themes are poetry and romantic. Next, we have Amos Uzi was born as Amos Klausner on May 4, 1939. He was an Israeli writer, novelist, journalist, and intellectual. He was also a professor of Hebrew literature at Ben-Gurion University of the Negev. From 1967 onwards, Uzi was a prominent advocate of a two-state solution to Israeli-Palestinian conflict. He has a lot of awards too, and some of it are the Bialik Prize, 1986. Second is Friedenpreis des Deutschen Buchendels in 1992. Legion of Honor, 1997. Israel Prize in 1998. Ovid Prize in 2004. The title of his famous work is A Tale of Love and Darkness by Amos Oz. His theme is the kibbutz, the city of Jerusalem, the idea of a promised land, and his own life story. For the last author, we have Saint Mark the Evangelist. He was born on 12 AD Syrian Libya, Shahat, Libya, and died on April 25, 68 AD. Patronage: Barristers, Venice, Egypt, Copts, Maynard. Major works is a Gospel of Mark. Major shrines: St. Mark's Basilica, Venice, St. Mark's Coptic, Orthodox Cathedral, Alexandria, and the parents is Aristobulus and Saint Mary. Saint Mark is the author of one of the 4 Gospel accounts and played a vital role in spreading the Gospel as a missionary in the early church. Mark is featured throughout the basilica in the variety of beautiful domes and chapels. Also referred to as John Mark, he was first introduced in Acts 12 as the companion of Paul and Barnabas on their apostolic missions. He worked alongside these two faithful Christians to spread the gospel across the nations. At one point, however, Mark's decision to withdraw from Pamphylia became a point of contention between Paul and Barnabas, who then decided to separate. Barnabas went with Mark to Cyprus, while Paul continued with Silas to Syria and Cilicia. In Christian tradition, Mark the Evangelist is symbolized by a lion. Mark the Evangelist's attributes are the lion in the desert. He can depict he can depicted as a bishop on a throne decorated with lions, as a man helping Venetian sailors. Apostle Saint Mark was one of the Christ's 70 disciples, one of the four evangelists and the traditional author of the second gospel, the Book of Mark. That will be all. I hope you learned from my presentation. Thank you for listening and have a nice day.